it's Laura from GameU, and welcome to part 2 of creating Sora's Keyblade in 12 steps. If you haven't watched the first part, be sure to check it out on our channel before continuing with part 2. So now we're going to move on to step 7, which is making the Mickey Mouse keychain. And the first part we're going to make is actually the Mickey Mouse head because it's going to be a lot easier to model. The first thing we're going to grab is a UV sphere. And we're going to make this smaller. And remember, Mickey Mouse's head is round, so we don't want to have any oval shapes. And we're just going to line it up to our reference. And we are going to shade smooth completely. There are no hard edges on this. We're going to duplicate the same ball by doing Shift D for duplicate. And we're going to make this smaller. And now the ears. Make sure the ears are as even as you can get them. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to put the same material that I used on the Keyblade on these, the silver shiny material with a low roughness. There we go. So that's how we do the Mickey Mouse head. And now we have to do the rest of the chains, which are going to be a little more complicated. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a mesh, and we're going to add a torus mesh. And then right at the bottom left where it says add torus, we're going to make the segments a little smaller, around like 6, and then the minor segments around like 14, and we're going to shrink this. And there we go, we've got a basic shape for a chain. So we're going to put this in place to exactly how they have it in the image. Here I'm trying to see if maybe I could smooth it, and it looked like smoothing it or subdividing it worked. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be rotating it, scaling it, and putting it in place. And the chains interlock to each other, so I'm just going to copy our reference image. So I'm just going to keep interlocking these chains and following the reference image and just keep repeating the same process till we get to the lobster claw. So now that we're at the lobster claw, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same process as we did for the hilt. We are going to add a plane, a mesh plane, and we are going to trace our lobster claw. So I'm just going to go over and trace the silhouette as accurate as I can. So now that I've made the cut, I press enter. It makes the cut on the plane. I dissolve the extra faces that we don't need. As you can see, we've got almost a perfect reference. I'm also going back and adding cuts where the holes are. That way when we extrude the other side, it'll also keep where we have holes on the lobster claw. So I went back, deleted the planes where the hole is. Seems like we have a little bit of an issue here, so I'm gonna pull down this vertice. Not sure what happened there. We're going to adjust these vertices. And I'm going to extrude all the edges. Now that I've extruded them, I'm going to fill hole, and then we're going to delete all these extra edges that we have that are in our way. So now that we finished that, we're going to grab all the edges around the lobster claw. And we are actually going to bevel it to give it more of a rounder look. Don't forget to select all the edges. Bevel. That's looking pretty good. Don't forget to bevel the inside. And we're going to put it on the chain after making it a little bit wider. And there we go. That looks pretty solid. That's how we finish the chain. I'm going to make slight adjustments to our chains and then also add the same silver material that I had on the Keyblade and on the Mickey Mouse head. Now I'm just adding all the different materials onto my chain and lobster claw, hiding our reference, and that's what it looks like so far without our reference image in the background. It's looking really good, pretty accurate. So now that we finished step 7, making the Mickey Mouse keychain, we're going to start on step 8 by making the key part of the Keyblade. And it's going to be really similar to the hilt and the Mickey Mouse chain, where we're just going to be cutting into a plane to get an accurate representation of the shape. We can see how smoothing and the subdivision changed how that looked at the end. Looks very nice. Now we just need to add that key part. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to be adding a plain mesh under my reference. Quickly do this, I just make the plane 90 degrees. Not like that. There we go. Make sure you change not the size, but the angle to 90. And now we're just going to do the same process as we did for the hilt. We're just going to go in with the knife tool and trace over our reference. So for these little rounded bits, just get in as close as you can and make little tiny increments. That way it looks round. So now that we've finished tracing, we're going to do the same exact thing as before. We're going to delete this face here and anything around our shape. Just like that. And we're going to make our plane come to the front. And we're going to extrude it just like that. So the shape looks pretty accurate. I'm going to hide our reference and place this exactly in the middle of our blade here. And in edit mode, I'm going to grab these extra edges. For some reason stuck around, I'm going to delete those too. As we can see, it's almost there, but it's not quite perfectly in the center. We're going to tuck it in. And I'm going into Y view and X view to see everything is symmetrical. And I'm adding that same silver material that's on the blade onto the key part. So there we go. If you look at the reference, and mine looks pretty exact, but we're going to do one more thing. We're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to grab these edges here, and we're going to bevel them. And I'm just going to take the time and make small slight adjustments to this just to get it a little more accurate towards the reference. And there we go. Now we've got the key part on his blade. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is step 9. And that's adding all the details to the grip. On the reference you can see there's like little diamonds onto the grip. So we're going to try to do the same thing onto our grip. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add some edge loops all around evenly onto our cylinder here, and make sure that it's evenly placed completely And when you do finish, that they're all squares, not rectangles, but they all have to be perfectly squared. The reason why we're doing this is because we're making a diamond shape. So now we've got perfect squares. We are going to select everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to poke faces, and then we're going to do tries to quads, and you'll see that it created this diamond shape. And we're just going to mess around with the max face angle. After getting the inset, should look something like this. Make sure you have wireframe on. Took me a few tries to do this to get it perfectly. So make sure you have inset, faces on, and just grab it very slowly. Just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude these outwards. And if it does this weird stuff, we may have to do it manually. And we're just going to scale it outwards. Line it up and get it perfect. And there we go. Looks pretty good, pretty detailed. We're gonna go back to our materials and we can see it's a pretty good grip handle. We made perfect diamonds. So now we're moving on to step 10, which is adding the remaining details in the model and the materials left. So I did leave this area alone. We need to add the blue into this area. Make sure to go in wireframe mode to select all the faces. So I'm just creating the blue metallic color, selecting all the faces. And I'm adding that blue onto there, just to those faces. Darkening the material a little bit on the blade. The blue was a little too bright, so I'm making it a darker blue. So I am going to make some adjustments. I'm going to bevel this just a little bit more, make those finer details. And close off this gap here so it fully connects to the hilt. So we are going to move on to step 11, which is adding those bolts that are in the hilt. This is going to be another one of those objects that's going to need a modifier. In order to create a hole into an object that's already made, we need to make it a boolean. And we'll see how that's done in a moment. Here I'm just making it to the size of the bolt on his keyblade. So here I'm taking the cylinder and I put it inside where the bolt is going to go, and we're actually going to model the inside of the cylinder into the actual shape of the half sphere. And now you can see we have a more finished, refined version of the bolt. I brought it out a little bit just so I can adjust it just a little more and I can see better. I'm just going to bevel it so it has more of a circular shape. And that looks pretty good. So what we do is we make this object a boolean and we reference it to our keyblade, and that will make it so the part of the hilt that we modeled that we don't want to show, we want to show the cylinder, is gone when we hide the cylinder. So as you can see, I unhide it and I hide it and we can see the bolt through it. So I'm going to go place it in all the other areas that we have this bolt. Now that I have these bolts perfectly placed, I'm just going to now hide them all, which is going to create a dent into the hilt where I need that bolt to be showing up. And I'm going to do the same exact things as the other cylinders. I'm also going to subdivide and smooth them just to give them an overall better appearance. Always make sure before you subdivide or smooth an object, you always want to save your work before you do that. Just there's always a chance that it could crash. It happened to me while I was working on this file, so make sure you always save before you do something like that. And now that we've finished step 11, the last step, step 12, just look at the reference and at your own model and make any final changes. This is your time to be changing anything that you want to change about your Keyblade, and think about how you can make this your own. Thank you for following along with me in creating Sora's Keyblade. If you want more tutorials on how to 3D model, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel to stay updated. Game on!